You see it everywhere, right? In parks, at cafes, definitely in our own homes. Toddlers, preschoolers, just completely captivated by a glowing screen. And, it feels like a normal part of childhood now. But have you ever stopped to wonder, beyond all the usual worries, what's really going on? What does the science actually say about how all this screen time is impacting their little developing brains?
I mean, to really get a sense of how big this change has been, just look at these numbers from the UK. Back in 2012, only about 1 in 7 preschoolers even had a tablet at home. Fast forward just 8 years, and that number skyrockets to over 80%. Wow. This wasn't some slow, gradual shift. It was a complete revolution in the playroom. Screens went from being a novelty to a basic fixture, almost in the blink of an eye.
Okay, so screens are everywhere. We get it. But the real question, the big one we're going to dig into today, is what are they actually doing to our kids? To get some answers, we're going to dive into a really fascinating study from 2023 that tried to solve this exact puzzle. So, first things first, let's look at the actual numbers. Just how much time are we really talking about here? The study started by measuring the daily screen time for these kids. So, on a typical weekday, these preschoolers were getting almost 2 hours of screen time. But check out the weekends. That number jumps up to over 2.5 hours. Just think about that for a second. That is a huge chunk of a young child's waking day spent looking at a screen. All right, so we know they're on screens a lot. The next step for the researchers was to see if that time connected to anything else. And what they found were the first major clues in our little investigation. Some really direct links between screen time and how these kids were developing. And the results were pretty striking. The more screen time a child had, the more likely they were to have 3 things: lower scores in their ability to actually speak, lower scores in understanding language, and a weaker feeling of closeness with their parents. Now, that's a powerful correlation for sure, but it's just the first layer, right? It tells us what's happening, but it doesn't tell us why. And this brings us to the core theory of the study, the big idea that starts to unlock this whole mystery. It's something called the displacement hypothesis. The idea itself is actually super simple, and it makes a lot of sense. Every single minute a child spends on a screen is a minute they are not spending doing something else. So the displacement hypothesis says that screen time isn't just adding something new to their day. It's actively pushing out or displacing other activities that are absolutely crucial for their development. So let's just walk through how this works. A kid's day only has so many hours, right? When you drop a couple of hours of screen time into that day, well, something's got to give. And what gets pushed out? According to this research, it's some of the most important stuff, like reading books together and having those rich back-and-forth chats with a parent. Okay, so let's follow this first trail of evidence. How exactly does all that screen time lead to those lower language skills we saw a minute ago? Well, the connection starts with story time. The study found a really clear and powerful link here. The more time kids spent on screens, both TV and devices, the less time they spent reading with a parent. It's like a seesaw. As screen time goes up, shared reading time goes down. The books just end up staying on the shelf. And this is the crucial insight. The study is suggesting that screens aren't some kind of direct poison for language skills. The effect is actually indirect. They hurt language development because they crowd out shared reading. And we know from decades of research that reading together is one of the most powerful engines for building a child's vocabulary and their understanding of the whole world. All right, on to our second trail of evidence. What about that link between screens and the parent-child bond? How does that work? Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. The study found that not all screens have the same effect. Look at the left side here. For TV, the effect was indirect. More TV time led to fewer quality interactions, which then led to less closeness. But look at the right side. For portable things like tablets and phones, the link was direct. The more a child used a device, the less close the parent felt to them, period. So why the difference? Well, for TV, the researchers think of it as a communication barrier. As this quote points out, just having the TV on in the background, even the noise of it, can reduce how much parents and children talk to each other. It just slowly chips away at those small but crucial moments of connection. But portable devices? They seem to be a different story. Because they're so immersive and because you can use them anywhere in the car, at the dinner table, the study suggests they might interrupt that parent-child bond more directly. They kind of create this little bubble around the child that's just harder for a parent to get through. So we've followed the clues, we've looked at the evidence. What's the final verdict from our investigation into screen time?
Let's just put it all together. The evidence is pretty clear. More screen time connects to challenges in language and in that parent-child bond. And the key mechanism, the how, is displacement. Screens push out shared reading, and that hurts language. And they push out quality interactions, which can weaken that all-important connection with a parent.
This quote from the authors really just says it all, doesn't it? The biggest story here isn't necessarily about whether the content on the screen is good or bad. It's about what kids are not doing in the real world because they're on those screens. And that leaves us with a final, really important question. Look, this isn't about demonizing technology. It's about being aware of what it displaces. If we know that screen time can push out connection and conversation, the real challenge for all of us is, how do we intentionally fight back and make space for those things to happen?